welcome to our annual lower school and middle school college counseling coffee. Our intention today is not to exacerbate any stress or, to ramp up that anxiety. In fact, it's the opposite. It really is our intention to demystify the college admissions journey, to really kind of alleviate some of that pressure and anxiety that you and your students might feel, to empower you with the knowledge of how you can, really help your students actualize their potential, to help them kind of find their pathways, whatever that may be. And it's such a specialized and personalized experience for each student. So, one of the things that we really pride ourselves on here at Meadows is the customization and the personalization that we're able to afford our parents and our students, because we're a small school. We're unique in that we have both student support services and counseling, as well as college counseling. And there are many schools that don't offer such robust resources. So we wanted to introduce ourselves. You can put a face to a name. We will show you how to find our contact information and resources that are available for you. But we wanted to just begin the dialogue and the discussion and answer your questions as well. Give you a chance to ask what you want to ask and to provide information and knowledge, because there's so many questions out there about what colleges are looking for, and how can I best position my students and ensure that they are successful but also happy and well balanced, right? And that's ultimately what we want too. When they reach the high school, yes, we want them to be academically successful, but we also want them to be happy. We want them to be fulfilled. We want them to be confident. We want them to be risk takers, not risk averse. We want them to have a growth mindset, to approach challenges with the idea that they're opportunities for learning, right? And any obstacles they face, so much of it is about that mindset and how to approach the challenges that they might encounter, right? Whether it's in middle school, upper school, or in life. So that's a little bit about why we're here.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I'm a lower school parent, and one of the things that happens whenever I go somewhere, even though my son is in first grade, parents know what I do and they quickly want to ask some questions about. So it feels like it's never really too early to begin the conversation. It might feel like, okay, maybe we don't start doing SAT present right now. Of course not, right? But it's good to have an idea of more or less what it means for a student to begin early. And the truth is, it's never too early to begin. And I don't mean that, there's going to be a recipe or there's going to be a formula for us to, okay, well, in first grade you do this, in second grade you do this. There's really nothing like that. In fact, the landscape of admissions changes ever so often. We've gone so many different phases. When I applied to college, it was pretty much a numbers game with a little bit of leadership, right? You had a good SAT, a good GPA, and a little bit of leadership that got you into a good school. If I were to, with my numbers and the things that I had, if I had applied now, it would have been pretty bad. And I did pretty well. It's just a different time, so there are different phases that change. I mean, we've gone through the numbers game, which was, the more old school. We've gone to a phase where it was all about hyper-specialization. They wanted this one student who was an expert at something, and they had done the same thing forever. And then that sort of started to die out, and then we had the well-rounded student. And now we're very much in a phase where interdisciplinarity is being sort of lauded by colleges. It's the student who's able to, connect different fields and different experiences into a cohesive and powerful narrative. So it's almost like not going to work if you want to plan from first grade or even fifth grade or even sixth grade to plan what is it that you're going to do in order to fit, because the currents of academia change, the things in admissions, the trends in admission will change. So in reality, there's no quick formula that you can come up with. But there's a thing that remains a constant in schools that apply something that we call holistic review, which is the vast majority of schools, right? Holistic review is basically the idea that they're going to look at students not just from their grades or just not based on their grades and numbers. They're going to look at them as a person, as a student, right? What are the different things that make them who they are? That means the way that they grew up, the school that they went to, the extracurriculars that they engage with, the way that they relate to their family, to their friends. Generally the person, right? So that's holistic review. And really what we want to make sure that we send as a core message is that one thing that is really important is to focus on a story. A story will always be effective in the college admissions process. And so you may think of the student as, okay, if we do X, Y, and Z, the student will be successful. But the truth is, in the holistic review approach, which is not a philosophy that I see changing anytime soon. I think holistic review has been true for many years, and it's likely to be true in perpetuity, really. It's what it is, what's the story that the student can tell about themselves. And I feel that's something that can begin really early. You don't have to be in 9th grade to begin your story. You don't have to be in 7th grade to begin your story. You could be in 1st grade and begin really that journey. Now, what's the role of parents? Obviously, a student is not going to go as a 7-year-old, okay, I'm going to build my own story. No. So the role of the parent really is, it's sometimes really tempting to say, okay, well, let's look at all of the possibilities that are available. Let's have them try 100 different things and see what sticks and see what they like. And I think that's really tempting because, of course, you want to see them try different things. And I don't think it's a terrible approach, but one thing that is really effective, in my opinion, is to be an observer. If you observe the student and the paths that they would take organically, you might get a better sense of what they want their story to be. So if you're looking at them, if there's a day that they don't have math or taekwondo or cello or all of that, and they have a couple hours to themselves, see what they do. Are they going to go and grab a paper and start drawing? Are they going to go outside and kick a ball? What is it that they're going to do when they don't have a structure of what it is that they have to do? So I think playing that role of the observer might lead into some discovery. Now that you've found discovery and say, oh wow, I see that, whenever given the time, my child goes to and picks up, which is the case with my daughter. If I give her some freedom, and she doesn't get a ton of freedom, but when she gets freedom, she goes and grabs a paper and she starts drawing, but not just drawing, she does like comic books. She did a little drawing and there's a story, and then if I put her in a different situation, where she's playing with her little brother, she starts to make up a story. She wants to be the director of some kind of a story. And then when I'm talking to her, she wants to tell me a story. So what do I see there? She wants to be a storyteller. That's likely going to be something that she's interested in. So now I think it's a good idea to find those little opportunities to see what those interests are and nurturing them. If maybe they have room to nurture an interest, it's good. And, is an interest that pops up in 3rd grade going to stay there forever? Probably not. Maybe. Who knows, right? But at least we know that it was an organic thing that showed from the student and that we can take it. And then, of course, it's a great idea to have them exposed to different things. If the student is the one leading the movement, and we have this little story, I learned out, I told Melissa, we went shopping, my wife, my daughter, and I, and we were going through the different things, and my wife's reaction was, okay, this, and this is your outfit, and then this other outfit. And then my daughter was like, don't I get any agency? Like, don't I get to choose what I'm going to wear at all? Like, can I at least contribute? could this be a conversation? And I think oftentimes that's something that we want to reflect on. Like, how much are we choosing the clothes for them? How much room are we giving them to choose? And what their style might, I mean, sometimes maybe perhaps they need a little bit of help, right? I mean, if they choose it's really hot outside and they want to wear a jacket, of course you tell them, perhaps that's not in your best interest. Of course there's parent guidance and there's parent support and there's ways to lead it, but it's helpful to have opportunities to guide what the students' decisions can be, and they feel empowered. It's really, really incredible to see a student when they are being heard and then they are giving the chances on things that they were excited about, and all of a sudden the parent is like, yeah, that thing that you were interested in, there's a certain sense of empowerment that's going to come from the student, which can help with all these other things that perhaps Dr. Whaley would know much more about than I do, but there's...
Of course. So I love what you're saying, and I think what we're also getting at then is that authenticity, right? When our students are applying to college, I mean, having worked in admissions for 12 years, I can tell you that admissions directors can sniff out like a bloodhound if a student just does something to try and impress an admissions reader, or if they're forced into something, because there's no passion, there's no enthusiasm. The way they write about it, whether it's it lacks a certain conviction and a certain, that genuine kind of engagement that we're really looking for, that we want for our students. And so, we don't want to force students to do something that they are not passionate about. And I think also what we're talking about is, when students, find what they love to do, or they have that genuine enthusiasm, there's an intrinsic motivation, right, that is internalized and they continue to manifest and to apply in everything that they do as well. And that's with academics, that's with extracurriculars, that's with volunteering, giving back to the community, with leadership, with any initiative, right? That's what we want, is for them to be self-motivated and to have that drive and determination to persist in an activity that is really meaningful to them. And that you see the evidence of that in every part of their life.
I agree. And I think once you're at that stage, then I think the parent can be, an incredible ally in finding different outlets for the students, right? If a student is competitive and they like to they have that competitive edge, and they are writers, there are many competitions for young writers. They can have an opportunity to do Scholastic. They can have an opportunity to do Young Arts. They're not going to know about it. That's where the parent can come in, right? Oh, I see that you're writing a lot. Would you be interested in entering this competition? What are the stakes there? Not so much. If they win something, they're going to feel really good about themselves. If they don't, who cares, right? So it's great practice. They start to develop, this habits of, sometimes I enter competitions, and, they can start to develop that. There are going to be opportunities for Olympiads. There are the junior Olympiads for different fields, for math. There's Math League, Kangaroo Math. There are different opportunities that the student can engage with. And we're happy if you've done your research and you found some stuff, but you're like, okay, I don't know if I'm getting all of them. Please, we're here. So please shoot us a message, and we're happy to give you some information. I'm like, okay, well, my student seems to be pretty competitive and they're super interested in paleontology and biology. What are some of the opportunities that are out there? And then, I can guide you in some certain things. CTY does a fantastic job. The Center for Talented Youth at Johns Hopkins does a fantastic job with little courses that are either in person or online or live for students who are interested that have niche interests. So and this is an example from a student that I had some years ago who started going to the Children's Museum, and there was a section where they got to discover fossils, and and the student kept asking their mom to go there every week, and they kept doing that. And the mom was like, okay, you've discovered the same fossil 100 times. How do I find opportunities for them to continue doing that through different programs? right? So, yes.
I have a question.
Sure.
When I had a college counselor, I was already in college. So what does that look like for a high school student or a middle school student? What exactly do you guys do on a regular basis? Do you meet with the students? Do you meet with the parents? Do you create a roadmap for them? What is it on a day-to-day basis? Tell us what that looks like for you guys.
Yes, all the above.
Yeah.
So we, one of the things that is one of the features of our college counseling program that's distinctive is our advisory. So we have advisory several times a week from 9th through 12th grade, and we have a college counseling curriculum, in fact. And starting in, it really ramps up in junior year when they actually start filling out the college application, working on their essays, requesting teacher recommendations. But up to even that point, they're starting to learn the landscape, right? What kind of colleges are they thinking about? Because it's not a one-size-fits-all. I mean, and this is where I think we can really assist in the conversation. And you know your students, your children, and better than we ever will, right? You understand kind of their proclivities when it comes to learning styles, right? Would they thrive in a discussion-oriented classroom? Or are they the kind of student that prefers a large university with so many opportunities to be able to explore, right? Do they want to be in a city? Do they want to be in a suburban, more bucolic setting? What are they interested in studying as well? So we start learning about the students through meetings, and we have an open door policy. That's what we pride ourselves on. So you have unlimited numbers of meetings with us. We actually encourage, we have students that will meet with us, every single week. And we love having that kind of trifecta role with parents as well, because your voice matters. The relationship that we're building with you, with your student, is going to even more inform the decision and kind of our advice about what the right fit is. And that's what we're looking for and really want to emphasize to our students and our parents, right? To look beyond the name brand, to look beyond the perceived prestige of an institution where so many of our students, and this is a universal issue, unfortunately, that's not particular to Meadows, but students apply to the same schools, right? Thereby exacerbating the competitiveness at the same schools. And so we want to branch out. We want to, introduce options to students that maybe they never heard of, that might align with what their personality, their academic interests, their extracurricular pursuits, their social interests, So it starts with meetings, one-on-one conversations. We are also meeting with students on course requests, course planning, and four-year planning as well, knowing that things will change, but maybe making suggestions, offering possibilities. We do a lot of conversations about summer planning also, how to, actualize and really, maximize the summer as well, whether it's competitions, research opportunities, summer programs, doing maps, doing auxiliary programs, whatever that might look like. So in every step of the way, it's timely, it's a continuous kind of communication as well in a lot of different avenues and approaches.
Yeah, I would say a lot of our role is strategic planning from the beginning, roadmaps, as you mentioned, then along the way, again, it's the same for students who are 9th, 10th, 11th grade. Sometimes they need help finding the right opportunities for what their interests are. So, these are the right sets of competitions. These are the summer programs that you might want to be looking into. These are the scholarships that you might want to be looking into. These are, different programs within college. So yes, a lot of the focus is on college and the right fit, but also on the way to get there. What are the right sort of avenues that they can take so that they can continue crafting that narrative that they're building. And really, our focus is to make sure that they become really intentional about building that authentic narrative, because that will lead to better understanding of what a college list will look like in the future, and probably aim for specific, again, more intentional programs when they're applying to. And I don't mean just colleges. Even within colleges, there are specific programs. Like if you think of UPenn, it's UPenn, right? But they have, and then maybe you know Wharton. Okay, well, there's the business schools, there's Penn, but then there's so many little things. There's the Huntsman program for people who are interested in like international relations and business, and then there's the M&T for those who are interested in the intersection between technology and business management, and then there's Viper for the students who are interested in energy research. There's all these different possibilities within the universities themselves that if we're doing just like, okay, we're gonna name brands, Princeton, Harvard, everybody can do that, right? But I think it's looking into the little niche opportunities that might be available. And I think that sometimes we're slowly getting into a point and we're getting that from our students. I mean, a good example of this, and I think this is a nice little way to flex a little bit about some of our results, but we've had students with great success in sort of like a specific program. This year, for example, we have, for the second year in a row, we've had a Robertson Scholar. So last year we had one student who won the Robertson Scholarship, which is the highest institutional merit-based Fulbright that you can get. That one's for Duke, and there's no other school of higher ranking that offers a Fulbright that's merit-based. The acceptance rate is a 0.03%. So we have about 50,000 to 100 applicants and about 30 people again. So we had one last year, we had one this year again. So, and then we have from the PLME, the BSMP program at Brown. We also had a second one in a row. We had one last year, we had one this year. The acceptance rate for that was a 1.6 acceptance rate this year, yes.
Just out of curiosity, when you talk about those two people, what's their profile look like? It's like, do they have 4.0, 3 scores? Like, just out of curiosity.
Yeah, academically, they're both very strong. They have a nice combination. I mean, they have different paths. They're not, and this is a nice little reminder that it's not really a recipe. Yeah. They're both, neither of them, of those two, is valedictorian. Or they're not in the top of the academic. They are in the top of the academic, but not at the very, very top. And then they have different things that they've pursued out of passion. Like obviously the PLME one has shown great commitment to the health sciences and community. The Robertson one has a wide range of interests in many different things. Great athlete, fantastic internationalist, multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary student with great numbers, but again, not the very best, but great things. But we have students who have even, we had this morning or last night, we got news from a student who was awarded the Boston University Trustee Scholarship. It's also only awarded to 30 people a year.
Full tuition.
It's a full tuition Boston University. Again, there are only a handful of like Fulbrights that are given merit-based institutionally. Boston University is one of them. And the academics are really strong with the student, but they're not immaculate. And I think sometimes the students get fixated with, oh my God, I got a C, it's over. And a C obviously is not fantastic, but even then, you can get some of these high-level awards if you get intentional. We also had a student admitted into Viper, the UPenn program that we just mentioned about energy research, which also accepts 30 students a year. So if we look at those numbers with a 0.03 acceptance rate, a 1.6 acceptance rate, and all of these are very low single digits acceptance rate, it's harder to get into those programs than to get into MIT or Harvard or Stanford, where the acceptance rates are about 3%, 4%, and so on. So I think when the students get intentional about programs and they have an understanding of what it is that they've built as a narrative and that they can target specific places, you get fantastic results. And I think this is the result of that, of students knowing that they can build a strong narrative, staying true to their authentic selves, and finding the opportunities to do so, and also leveraging the student. I mean, the reality is those students who want all of those things, I counted from one of the students last year, we had around 47 meetings with that student. So,
Yes.
If you take advantage of the resources available to you, that does pay off. I mean, it helps when you are using the resources that are available to you. So, and all of these students are students that we know really well, that we work closely with. So, of course, we want the students to work with us and leverage the resources that they have available to them. Yes?
So I would imagine that any student who would be accepted to a program like that, with that small acceptance rate, is pretty proactive already and pretty kind of outgoing. Is there anything kind of intentional and mindful that your team does to really engage the students who don't have a 4.0 and would never dream of applying to Harvard or Princeton, and who are kind of just middle of the road good students who work really hard but feel, I guess, like they're not very engaged because this environment is so competitive?
Right. Yeah, no, I mean, we love those students. In fact, we worked very closely with a lot of those students, and the best thing that we can do is to get started early. We had, I think once we did one of these conversations where we had a sheet of how our students do, and, we divided our class by thirds, like, GPA-wise, the upper third, the middle third, and then the lower third. And then if we look at that in the results, they're actually quite good. I think the vast majority of the students in the first, second, even half of the third are getting into like top 40 schools, top 50 schools, and stuff like that. So I think obviously it's very similar. We want to make sure that they are engaging as much with their extracurriculars, that they have a combination of an intellectual curiosity, their GPA, that they are doing something to make the world a better place, or something community involvement wise. Maybe it's at a different scale. Maybe they're not going to have an international, TED Talk series or whatever it is, right? But at whatever scale it can be done, it's going to help. And it's going to help the student also build a more intentional background. And, yes, maybe it's not going to be the PLME, but it's going to be something else. Maybe another DSMD program that is perhaps a little less selective, or maybe it's not going to be the Robertson, but it could be a half tuition at Case Western. There's different things that a student can do to accomplish what they are. I think there are opportunities not just for the very best students, there are opportunities for all of them. And I think the approach doesn't really change. If they're authentic, if they pursue opportunities that are matching their interests, even if they're not, again, electrifying, but they're interested in the intersection between, public health and statistics, we can find opportunities for them to engage in meaningful activities, maybe a little bit of research, maybe they do something, whatever it may be, there really are opportunities for everyone. And it's not, it's not different. Perhaps the results might be a little bit different. And that's okay. I think you'll find, there's a student who will likely thrive at Loyola Maryland University, which is a fantastic school, that if you put them at MIT, it's just not going to work. And it's not because it's just not the right fit. So, we don't want to force it either into, okay, well, we're going to do whatever it takes so that you get into this school, and then it turns out that they're not happy at that school, right? So it's all about making sure that we nurture them and develop them and give them, the widespread of opportunities available to them so that they can thrive, but also that they're making decisions that are intentional and fit with that. So, I think if we look at the way that those students do, they do great, and I think we're taking steps to make sure that, again, they're becoming more intentional about different programs that they're targeting and finding the right niche as well.
I think one of the positive things about the direction of our school and where we're going is we're expanding. Within our own department, we're poised and excited to announce that we are planning on hiring a third college counselor to join our team, which will, again, allow us to expand the conversations that we're having with students. And through those conversations, I can tell when a student talks about their DECA competitions, a student who might be a B student and previously think of themselves as, an average student, but they are just thriving and winning awards and seeing their potential in these competitions because now we're building that program. And having those conversations and seeing their eyes light up, that to me, I immediately like, ding, 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 right? This is an area where they can really start diving further in, and we can then build upon the foundations of their success and help them kind of start to feel confident in what they love to do. And it is a challenge here at Meadows because it's such a highly competitive, they constantly compare themselves to each other and with their colleges, with their test scores, with their grades, etc. By really, we constantly are telling them, don't compare yourself to anyone else. Run your race, right? Do your thing. And if you do it with purposefulness and passion, the evidence is going to show. And we can then translate that and communicate that to colleges as well. And colleges recognize that and see that and want to award that. So I think a lot of it comes from that relationship building that happens, and for us, seeing where those passions lie, where they excel, or where their interests are, and helping them actualize that and take that to the next level as well. And it starts through the individual meetings and conversations. And I also one of the things I love doing is going into classes. So I started to go into classes, observe our students, what they're like kind of in the wild, so to speak, right? Because the reality is, we only see our students, a fraction of the time in a meeting. But to actually see them, how they articulate themselves, how they work with their peers, their collaboration, their creativity, their innovation, their thoughtfulness, their maturity, their respectfulness, their intellectual curiosity is really a blessing. And that helps us also when we're writing recommendation letters, when we're having these conversations, like, wow, I saw you, when I watched that Mark Twain debate, you were on fire, right? Zipping out those debates. And they're like, wow, she actually cares, right? And so she started to know me. And that's how we reach those students that are kind of like, I don't know where I belong.
Yeah, there was a student, last year I had a student who I had never met, and I went to the class, and I saw them it was a Harkness, and it was their turn to present, and they did a really nice presentation, and at the end I said, wow, that was fantastic. The way that you did it reminded me of graduate students, blah, 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 and all of a sudden the students started showing up in my office. So those little things make a big difference, and we want to make sure that we have the opportunity to meet with students.
I have a question. I've been thinking about this. I can't really figure it out. What is your incentive? What is your sort of KPI? After a whole year, how does your boss judge your work, if it's successful or not? And where do you spend your energy?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, so we deliver reports at the end of the year to the board, as well as to Dr. Berkeley and a variety of constituents, in fact, communicating to parents what our results are. So while we do publish statistics regarding highly selectives, not only among the top 50, both according to the perceived U.S. News and World Report statistics, for example, and how many students, but it's also about the fit. And that's one of the things that we really appreciate in our conversations with the board, which is that they understand that a student's success isn't determined just based on the name of the institution, whether it's highly selective, but also whether it's a school that aligns with what the student is interested in pursuing. So for example, we have a student who was admitted to Penn State in their journalism program. She's interested in sports journalism. And that's something, and Penn State has one of the best, one of the finest sports journalism programs in the country. And part of the communication that has to happen with all of our constituents is understanding that, you think Penn State, no, it's not that selective, but within that niche, right, It is. So it demands a lot of explanation, but also what's great is communicating our wins. So for example, we had a student this year who was admitted to Amherst. It's our first student admitted to Amherst since 2014. You know, and part of that is because students don't apply to small liberal arts colleges, and we want to change that. We had a student admitted to Wesleyan this year, and we had a student admitted to Kenyon.
Is that one of your mandates from the board to get to usher people into the small liberals? Do you get like Williams or
Not necessarily that, but it's, you know, helping students find the right fit, whatever makes, and of course that's pretty ambiguous, but as we develop with the students a relationship, we kind of start to figure out, okay, based on what your interests are, it seems likely that you would thrive in a smaller environment, and then maybe the student had ambitions of UMich and all that, but we see that whenever they're put in a setting where there are 30 people, they cannot deal with it very well, but when they're in small settings of 5 people, they thrive. Perhaps UMich, where you're going to have 150 people in one classroom at some point, might not be better than Williams, where there's possibilities to have like 2 students and 1 teacher at some point, right? So it's finding like the right. So I think, I mean, ultimately the first thing that we have to do is make sure that the results are good. And the results are good, that's relatively easy to look into, how many people get into very selective programs and very selective institutions. That's clearly the first thing that, and I mean, I come from the world of college consulting in the private sector, not from the school, and it's all about results, you know? There's nothing else. If you get into it's not just the school, it's for the student. It's like if a student who is a 2.9 student gets into a far reach, that's how you measure the accomplishment. It's in the context of the student, how well did they do based on the far reach, match, and there's a whole spectrum there. So the better they do based on where they are and how far they got in, that's the way that you measure the more tangible success. But there's this whole other part that is pretty, particularly institutionally, when we have to look at, well, are we doing right by our students? We could create a strategy where we make sure that everybody's getting into far reaches, but are we doing them a disservice if they then drop out? So we could go full-blown, mechanic and devise the best ways to produce the most people who get into top 15 schools. But and that would probably serve its purpose, but then it's also about retention and student happiness at the schools that they get into. And then all these other things that as an institution, as a school, we have to also care about. How many students did not transfer out? Like if we get a ton, I could say, okay, let's all, right now, the goal is to get into the best possible school. Let's all apply to a summer program at UChicago. We're all going to ED 0. That's the best possible way to get the best possible shot at a top 10 school. Let's all do it. UChicago will grind you. I know from experience. It will, grind you to a fine powder, and it's not forever. So we could get a lot of students into UChicago, but what's going to happen then? A lot of them are going to start dropping out because it's not going to be for them. So, there are ways. UChicago makes it relatively not easy, but they have probably the most predictable path to get into school. If you do the right things. Yes.
Do you keep data on retention and then terminal degrees that our students have?
So we're getting better at it. Yes.
Yeah. So the program that we use, Naviance, we now subscribe to a resource where we can track their matriculation and whether they are transferring from one school to another. And also, we have a transfer request form on our website. We ask them to fill that out if they're asking for a transcript to transfer as well. And it has a questionnaire that asks them, why are you transferring? What could we have done better? Why did what made you choose the school? Was this actually your first choice? And remarkably enough, many students who do fill out the form indicate that the school that they are transferring out of was their first choice, believe it or not. And one particular student who I followed up with, I was really curious to know, because he said, well, there's nothing you could have done from a college counseling standpoint. And I talked to him, he's like, sometimes you just have to experience it yourself. to know what it is you're looking for. So through that, that lived experience. But yes, we are tracking more and more of that data. It's our hope that those numbers, it's a very small percentage of students that do transfer. A lot of times it might be for programming reasons. Maybe the school that they're currently attending doesn't have the major that they're looking for. Maybe they want to be closer to home, transferring back, for example, or maybe it's cost as well. So those are typically the most popular reasons.
My understanding is the program begins in ninth grade. As parents of a middle schooler, what do you think that we can do for our kids, your students, to get the most out of your program starting in their students?
So actually, I think one of our initiatives with hiring a third college counselor is to start going into the middle school a lot more. And so we're going to partner up with the counselors there as well to make sure that we have opportunities for students to engage more with the college counseling office in middle school, and maybe even starting in a little bit in lower school. Perhaps not like college, we're not going to call it that, but to get started there. So there will be some structures in place where we're going to work more collaboratively with the middle school to do that. The other thing that we are college counselors for the school, not for the upper school. So please set up a meeting. We're happy to do the same work that we do across the division, really, and that has always been a possibility. I know it's just not, people don't know, but we're happy to work with middle schoolers, lower, whatever it may be. Again, it's the beauty of being in a K through 12 school. We are part of the institution, not just at the upper school. We're not if you're in middle school. We're not going to do that. We're happy to meet, so we're happy to strategize, and I think we can definitely make this a more personalized support based on the particular experiences.
So what can the parents do to make sure that our students are making the most of it? Like from that first meeting, whether it's now or next year or whenever, it's certainly to your parent at home. Do you think the best results happen when parents are engaged, you're giving them suggestions, you're taking them to college tours or anything like that, or is it do you think the best results happen when the student has full agency and make sure someone's going to have a story? Do you want to walk a story?
It's definitely a balance, but I will say this. I think when you look at the very successful students, there's generally a very involved parent. So, parents play a crucial role that cannot be downplayed. I think when there's a parent behind the student that's helping them guide the decisions that they make, and also connect with the college counselor as a team, really, and that they can help sort of like push the student. Remember this conversation when we had that strategic planning meeting? You're supposed to be doing this. What happened there? Or, it's spring break, it's time to go, maybe we can do some school visits. Let's talk to the college counselor to see, because the student, even if they are motivated or whatever, they're still kids. So they need a little bit of that guidance and push, and I think, college counseling can obviously do a little bit of that, or a lot of that, but I think there's a role that the parents can play that it's absolutely crucial. And I think, I cannot think of a very, very successful student that didn't have an involved parent behind it. I think, perhaps they're not fully controlling, but they're there. I think that there's always someone there to.
Do you want a parent in the room during the meetings? Just like talking.
What I found to be the most successful is in the first strategic planning meeting. If a parent is there, it's really helpful because they can see more or less what the path can be, and then they're already involved. I do love meetings also just with the student at some point, and also meetings just with the parent at some point. I think if we have a combination of those things, generally that's where we're most successful.
And how do you, between the two or student group, how do you assign?
So since we're going to have a new college counselor, one of the things that we're planning on doing is for starting with the rising freshmen, we were going to be distributing or dividing the students alphabetically based on last name. We haven't decided yet what that distribution looks like, And there will be exceptions, like for example, I have met with a parent of an 8th grader 3 times already, and we've discussed course scheduling, course planning, what to do over the summers, whether he wants to enroll his kid in the SAT boot camp class, what the extracurricular landscape looks like, etc. So, I mean, I imagine for that parent, since I've met with them 3 times and I met with the student once already, I'll probably end up working with them and taking them no matter what that alphabetical assignment
Well, we're dummies, so we're in there.
It allows for that kind of clear distinction, so that way, no matter if you're in a lower school or middle school, even before you get to the high school, you will know who that assigned counselor is.
One thing that we'll say though, we really want to stress that, the student doesn't just have one counselor. The truth is, they have 2, 3 eventually, right? So it's not like, hey, you're assigned to Ms. Lustig. We all the time send students to one place or another. We've met many times with students that are Lustig and students of mine. It's basically the person who will write your letter of rec. But the reality is that we work. I mean, our offices are next to each other, and we talk, we like each other, so we collaborate quite a lot. So it's not like you're assigned to one person and therefore you owe fealty to the person, and there's no competition between the counselors. There's no seeing who does best in the other. Our wins are our wins.
Yes.
And we want to make sure that they all get the 3 counselors.
Do either of you have a certain type of student that you feel strongest with, like Melissa takes all the athletes and Jenny takes all the writers, or is it not really?
I would say we're all kind of generalists. I mean, there is, historically, I work a lot with the STEM kids, with the, computer science, engineering students. If I had a specialty, my specialty will be STEM kids.
And I have a very keen understanding of financial aid and scholarships. Having that for me when I was looking at colleges was a determining factor, and I'm really passionate about helping families make college affordable and get as much money as possible to make college and make sure that it's accessible. So I operate our scholarship database as well, and I do work quite often with athletes also, but we both, like Denny said, we're both generalists. So
And I think to your point, I mean, the truth is, my background is again mostly in the private sector. I'm not the best with financial aid stuff. I have far less experience. So, and I know that. So, we can always make sure that we collaborate. Yes.
Sorry, just to tack on to that question. So, as a parent of an 8th grader going into 9th grade, you don't set up meetings regularly. We have to, like the example you just gave, sounds like we need to all be asking you both for meetings with our children. Because what I didn't understand is we haven't had any meetings to go through sort of like what is the high school plan. And I didn't know if the school already does that, or if you're in charge of that, or if there's another meeting for it.
So we've done both in the past. One thing that we do is, it really depends on our year is very cyclical. So in the fall, for example, we're working primarily with our seniors as they're applying to college, and we're writing letters of recommendation. We're also working with students on course requests, etc. So in a lot of those cases, we'll reach out to our seniors, or the seniors are demanding those meetings frequently. But if we haven't met with any of our upper school students, we will reach out. In the past, we've required meetings and kind of made sure to record that as part of our goals. Our goal is to meet with at least once every semester, each student in the upper school. But parents often also reach out, students and parents reach out, or they drop by, you're shaking your head, right? You know, so it's both, it's both. So I will admit that depending on the time of year, our availability can be very limited to freshmen and sophomores, just because of where our kind of our focus is on preparing the seniors for applying.
I would say we use a Calendly system that gives like an hour slot, 45 minutes, 30, 15 minutes. If there's a slot, you take it, right? So we have that system where it allows for students to set up the meetings when they can. We do call for early meetings. I like for ninth graders. I love, and we send out an email to meet with the ninth graders. It can be with the family. I mean, some families can't make it, but we can make a meeting where we at least have one initial point of contact where we can establish sort of like a strategic planning. And that can happen, the truth is, for a ninth grader, it could happen in the second semester as well, or in the first semester.
But even for just course selection, are you the right people to come to, or do they go to somebody else?
To discuss the courses, yes.
Yes, for next year.
Yeah, so
So you're not having a separate meeting. They would just have, I didn't know.
So we actually are, so tomorrow, in fact, during advisory, that's the benefit of advisory, is we have a captive audience, so to speak. So they have to hear us and our messaging. So we're actually meeting with the rising seniors in the Upper School Common to go over the course selection, how they register for classes, to answer questions about pathways, about choices, and we're doing that actually with every single class. So we're doing that with the rising, not rising 10th graders as well. We definitely, and we have, and that's in addition to individual meetings that we have, and that's also in addition to meetings that they're having with their advisors. They're individuals advisors. So the way advisory works is they're in a family, basically, with between 8 and 12 other students assigned to a teacher who is kind of, that's their little grouping for all 4 years. So they're also meeting with their advisors and their faculty members. The other thing what we do is, especially in math and foreign language, is the students come to us. Like I had a student asking in 8th grade who was asking, should I take that algebra review over the summer? We have a lot of questions about summer math, for example, or that next sequence, right? If they're in, algebra 2 trig, should they take pre-calc over the summer to accelerate to AP calculus? Well, sometimes if they are a little bit rusty in math, or maybe if their grades or test scores don't indicate that they're exceptionally strong in math, we'll say, I think you really need to talk to the chair of the department. And oftentimes I do defer to the chair of the department, who has more of that expertise and tribal knowledge in terms of the historically how students have done academically. So it's actually a team effort in many ways. When it comes to creating new courses, when it comes to what those options, what the pathways might look like. So they have a lot of different people, a lot of resources at the upper school, not beyond just us.
For rising ninth graders, I mean, what we have done in the past is we brought them into the building and they got like 15-minute meetings to do course selection. We're still trying to figure out what that's going to look like this year, but we might have something. So the ones that we're talking about is for rising 10th, 11th, 12th.
So there's been a lot, I have sat there, but there's been a lot of discussion among some of the parents about independent consultants outside the school. So in addition to what you guys do, I know like a certain number of parents have outside counselors that work with their students, but how does that, I guess what percentage of students currently have that kind of situation, and how does it integrate with school counseling as well?
Yeah, great question. So this is my 6th year here. I would say that it's remained pretty consistent over the years with maybe about 15 to 20% of the students who will hire outside. One of the things that happens is that students might hire outside prep classes or companies for testing for SAT and ACT. And what happens is that those companies, as they are businesses, of course, see a ripe opportunity to then translate that into, hey, by the way, we can help you with your applications for another $10,000, right? And the reality is, if you use us and really take advantage, I can tell you that that student who won the Robertson did not have an outside counselor. The student who was admitted to Amherst did not have an outside counselor. The student who was admitted to Viper did not have an outside counselor. All of those students did not have outside counselors. Another one of our students who was just admitted to USC, no outside counselor. And actually what we see, I've never spoken to any of the outside counselors here, which is really odd because when I worked in Aspen, at Aspen High School previous to here, where I worked for 6 years, another 6 years, I actually collaborated quite a bit. It was a little bit more of a small town community, right, where there was a lot of transparency. Hey, I have a student coming to you, we worked on their essays, but I really trust you and I want to make sure that, it's still their voice in the essay. None of the outside counselors here or independents have ever reached out to us.
And I think that's the issue. So college consultants, I cannot speak for you. College consultants, I'm one, I have a company. I would say who the college consultants matters quite a bit. The truth is, this is not a mecca for education, and the college consultants are reflective of the city. So I think, that's the biggest issue that I see. And so I think, I don't think they're necessary in general. Especially because if you're a small school with hours with an open door where we can collaborate, it's better you collaborate with the person that's going to write your letter, Frank. That's all I can say. So, because the college consultant...
Here, where your student is going, it's better to have a recommendation from the counselor at Meadows versus...
Oh, for sure.
The college will not accept
The college will not accept a consultant letter of rank. So the truth is, it's much better for the student to collaborate with the person who will write the letter. It's just a no-brainer. Of course, again, there are obviously benefits of working with a college consultant, but the reality is, for the purposes in the way the school is structured and the opportunities the students have.
Now, there are exceptions. So, for example, for students that are interested in auditioning for performing arts, right, that are putting together portfolios, right, that are going to Unifieds, which is auditions for a collective audience of college admission counselors, right? That's a hyper-specialized niche that requires so much expertise and understanding, but that sometimes it does make sense to hire outside. Same thing sometimes with athletics, right? Where, especially if an athlete is putting together a highlight reel, right? And their club coaches are working with the coaches at the universities, right? And really kind of facilitating that as well. But so there are exceptions to that when it makes sense, but even then, we want to collaborate, right? Like Mr. Burris, for example, he worked with one of our students, was it 2 years? Last year, right? Who is at Tisch, which is the best program at NYU.
Sport directing.
For directing. And he was actively involved in helping her with, her reels and her contributions in the application. So it really should be a collaboration as much as possible.
For architecture students, whoever has like a portfolio, very specific things, of course, you probably want to have some support on that.
I'm curious if you can speak a little bit to the general landscape as someone with friends whose children are a little older. It seems like a disaster zone out there, if that was
applications and every single one of them competing to have the lowest acceptance rate. And so I'm curious how the median Meadows student fits into that kind of a landscape. I'm aware that we have like really exceptional students at this school, and I think that's amazing. But I'm curious, like, I hear a lot about, like, if you are not the top ranked kid in your class, you are not going top 50, and then you're, oh, but it's, you know, they take into account your school profile, but then if they're being bombarded with 57,000 early applications, and like, I don't see how that's real life, so I think there's a world in which there's a subset of people, of families here, who are like, should I be thinking about putting my student in a school that's less competitive so they can be near the top of those rankings and get some of those more, you know, like awards and notifications and societies and all of those things that they can put on the resume that they won't get here because there are 9 national finalists here.
No, it's a great question.
I would say, I mean, if we look at the results like very directly, UC Irvine this year, top 30 school, accepted 12 of our students.
Yeah.
Going into the lower third of GPA. So we have in the graduating class of 60-something, the lower 20-something getting accepted into a top 30 school.
So it's real that these admissions counselors understand that the Meadows
Yeah.
3.5 is not.
Yes, so we have students that, you know, with 3.5, 3.4, 3.5s unweighted, right? Who are admitted to SMU, TCU, to LMU, Chapman, admitted to, you know, just a
Wisconsin-Madison.
Wisconsin, University of Illinois, Urbana,
Yeah.
you know, which was phenomenal. In fact, you know, one of our students was admitted to, in the past, who was admitted to USC, had also like a 3.6, 3.7.
We have a new niche this
We
year.
have it, yes.
Pretty close.
Yes.
So, I mean,
Exactly.
we do have some
Yes.
sometimes exceptional numbers where, you know, it's not in the upper. even
Right, but
upper
are most
third.
of the kids who have really clear stories, and like I'll just speak for my students, are explorers. They do not have a singular passion focus. They're not at that point right now. I think they're really well.
They read stories, they're not writing news yet.
I mean, the truth is, the system rewards students who are able to develop an authentic narrative.
For sure, but just from a sheer, like, they're gonna find out, their kids are gonna find out a good test score. They're gonna find out what in my books was a good GPA, because you alluded to this earlier, like stats.
Yeah.
In the era of grade division across the country and AP being valued at different weights and all the different weights. I think it might be good to get some visibility or speak to what those other success stories look like, and if that's a real thing. Because it's nice to hear that people look at the Meadows GPA as something, but then you hear there's 95,000 early decision applicants at Rutgers, and you're like, what?
Yeah, Rutgers are over
They don't know who the heck we are, and how can that be real, that they're looking at every one of those 95.
One of the great advantages.
Isn't it true now, though, that colleges are actually looking for a more diverse student? I mean, it's not always about the numbers anymore, right? So if you're finding, like, if your kid has a specific thing that they're really good at, I think that the colleges or the universities are looking more for that student nowadays, because they want to diversify
There are several things we were talking, like, is it
Yeah.
better for us to be in an easier school so our GPA?
Or more specific schools that have like a niche thing that, you know, what, there's a lot of different students in different universities and colleges now that maybe never did before, because those are those places that they fit well, or that are looking for that student, and so is that like part of what your job is to find those, you know, universities and colleges that are looking for specific things like that, right? Because that's what is more nowadays than versus 10, 20 years ago.
And I think that happens specifically with students. Like, I had a student who, we were asking them, like, I was asking them, oh, what are you into? And they were giving me very academic answers, like, oh, I like math. I was like, okay, no, what else do you do? Oh, you know, I like to run in the mornings. And they're like, no, but like, what do you really enjoy doing? And then it was like with an embarrassed tone, I coin collect. And then it's like, oh, I have a collection of coins. And I was like, there you go. this is the type of stuff that, sometimes you can turn that into a narrative and a story, and you can build something with it, even for a student that might not be in, AP Physics C, but they have a little interest or multiple interests, and they find ways to connect them with one another, build a little bit of a narrative. At the end of the day, if they did that, they will be better off than someone with a single person.
I don't want to disparage any of the other schools. I mean, we can only say what your student is afforded here, which is our expertise. And quite honestly, I had a student who ended up enrolling at Rice. And when we were working on her application, one of the activities she put down was that she was a diarist. She loved writing in her diary, and she was also a pen pal during the pandemic. She ended up starting an organization where she reached out to internationally to try and build bridges and communication, and she translated that into it became one of her college essays as well. And at first, she was really reluctant to talk about that. And I was like, this is one of the things that's going to really distinguish you and set you apart because it's so unique. And so for us, I mean, at a larger school or maybe a school where you don't have the kind of connection that we're able to build with your student, they might not be able to pick up on those nuances that say, this is what I can tell you right now, a college is going to love this story right here. And to help them own that and articulate that through their application, through their essays, and also the strategization when it comes to building the list as well as when to apply, right? So, I mean, we can really help students kind of understand what that landscape looks like, the difference between applying early versus applying regular, right? And how much more it benefits them. And then work with them over the summers. We're here over the summers. I say to my students, several of my students I've met with over the years, my Viper student, or the Viper student, right? We met with him over the summers and worked on his college essay. So when he was ready to launch, when he came back in the senior year. So, it's also the relationship building. Yes, it's rigorous, but at the same time, we also have a relationship with the college admission counselors that extends, that buys us a great deal of, I would say, trust, just that connection where I can pick up the phone and I can call Rocco at USC and say, I need to put in a good word for my student who bears your same name, by the way. And also ask them, what is the landscape looking like for our students, right? And we can do that the same thing because we have a case study here that we host 20 college counselors. We've had everyone from the University of Chicago to Northwestern to Brown to NYU, Carnegie Mellon, and so we're on a first name basis with these admissions directors, and your students benefit from that as well.
I would say just numbers-wise, if you look at it numbers-wise, of course, is there a possibility that at some point somebody went to a different school? Perhaps, but I think if you look at it collectively, it's hard for if you compare how the top 60-70% of this school does, I don't know which school, but it will likely do better than the top 30% of a different school. So you have to check more or less where that lies. And I think, generally speaking, it's a pretty good, idea to stay, I would say. Especially if we're thinking in the city, if you go out of state, it's a lot harder. People don't know how much of a benefit it is to be in Nevada. And I think it's a huge, huge advantage. A lot of our students, if you put them in Silicon Valley or New York or New Jersey, or Fairfax County, or Virginia, the results would be different. So I think that the state matters. It's not the most really selective state yet.
Is there a suggested or max cap of applications?
No. One year I attempted to implement a cap in the best interest of the students. Every application is an inordinate amount of work, especially if they're applying to colleges that require And, you know, you multiply that by, you know, 30, right? I had a student one year who applied to 25 schools, and his Google Doc, right, Word doc, Google Doc, was 46 pages of supplement essays. I mean, that is so stressful. It stresses me out just to know what he was going through. You know, so that was not received well by students or parents, quite honestly, or administration, and rightfully so, right? Like, because the reality is that you never know what a college is looking for. I mean, we have students who, you know, who have been admitted to Northwestern and waitlisted at Notre Dame, and another student who is equally phenomenal, who was waitlisted at Northwestern and admitted to Notre Dame. Very, very similar. I mean, they're both exceptional. You just don't know. And so the reality is, I mean, more and more of our students are applying to schools, but we want it, again, to be well-researched, well-informed. It's why I think we do encourage students. We have an on-demand video, actually. If you go into your parent portal and scroll down, there's a link to our on-demand college counseling videos. Some of them that you might find beneficial, like one of them is college visits. Part 1 and part 2, like when to start thinking about putting boots on campus, right? Because I think, you know, we don't want to amplify the pressure and start thinking about college too early, but if you're vacationing somewhere, if you're going somewhere for an athletic camp or a tournament, why not stop by UCSD, take a virtual tour, or take a, you know, a quick look around and start getting a broad sense of what you're looking for and what feels like the right fit. So there's other ones on the 9th grade timeline. There's another video from last year when we presented on the rising 9th grade parents in particular as well. So there's a lot of on-demand videos there that can really help. But no, we don't limit. We try to ensure that all the schools on the students list, there's a reason why they are on that list. And that they're not just doing a scattershot of all highest selectives. We also want them to be balanced, a balanced list of schools that are foundation schools, where the students are not only, you know, admissible, but there's a, you know, maybe they have the major that they're looking for, maybe there's a financial reason they're applying there, and then based on numbers, preliminary numbers, right? And then also the target schools where they have a 50-50 chance of admission. And, you know, it's not a sure thing, but it's not brown either. And then those highly selective schools. Again, because colleges have what are called institutional priorities. And these change every year. It could be, you know, they're looking for a student, they have a new program, like UNLV is just starting an engineering technology major, right? Maybe a college a couple years ago, Chapman was starting an engineering program. They're looking for students interested in that major, right? And so maybe that's an institutional priority. Maybe it's students with legacies, maybe it's athletes, maybe it's artists, maybe it's, you know, a certain demographic or geography. So you kind of have to, you do kind of have to cast a wide net, but within reason and, again, intentionality.
Well, I would say what's tricky with always with college lists is you could potentially apply, if you apply to 7 UCs, 7 CSUs, Case Western and Northeastern. That's a ton of schools. It's 4 essays.
Right.
So it's not about the number of schools, it's about how much work it will be. So you could also apply to the top 5 schools, and that's about 45 essays. So it depends on which schools you're applying to versus the number of schools that you're applying to. So that's something that you have to keep in mind.
How do students know the various scholarship options out there and when to apply, what's required? Is there a bulletin board somewhere on that?
Yeah. So are you talking specifically about college-related scholarships, school-related scholarships like the Robertson, for example, or the Jefferson? Or are you talking about outside scholarships within like external organizations? Both. Okay. So one of the things that we do, again, during advisory is we have several lessons on helping students find scholarships and apply for scholarships. We also send out mass emails to students and parents, and on our website here as well. And one of the things we do is, so if you go to the website and you click on financial aid and scholarships right here, and you scroll down, so Nevada National Scholarship Listings. So we maintain this database. These are all well-vetted applications. There's a scholarship out there for everyone. There's actually one right now that's open for students ages 8, middle schoolers as well. Some of them are very specialized to particular kinds of affinities, whether it's creative writing or certain demographics, etc. But there's a reason why our students, last year our students, we had 65 students and they earned over $10 million in scholarships. This year, so far, they've earned over $6.6 million as well. For 65, another 65 students.
We'll have a lot more.
Yeah, we'll have a lot more, exactly.
Trustees
So
and
it's both within the conversation that we have with the student about, like, I want to know, is financial aid and scholarships, is that going to be a factor in the decision? You know, and oftentimes we would like it, you know, we would like money, you know, it wouldn't hurt, right? I don't think any parent would turn down free money. But if it's a real significant determining factor, you know, I'll tailor my recommendation on colleges to those. Like I had a student last year who only applied to colleges that were need blind. For example, so when a college reads, okay, it's getting into the nitty-gritty here, but in the world of college admissions, there are need-aware institutions that will look at whether student and family have applied for financial aid, and there's need blind schools that don't care, don't look at whether your student applied for financial aid. I will go on record to say, having worked at a need-aware institution, it's not the fact that your student applied for financial aid that matters, that can impact it. It's how much money. If you only need a little bit of money, right, you're low need, right, or even no need, right, based on the FAFSA profile, it will not impact the student at all. They'll be admitted, of course, on their own merits. If they are what we call deep need, and they need full funding, right, they're Pell eligible, they're on, you know, a tuition discount, et cetera, that could potentially impact students if they're on the margins academically, right? If they are between admit and wait list, right? And they're looking at those determining institutional priorities, right? And being fiscally responsible as an institution, it could impact it depending on how much money they need. So for those students, if I know that, you know, that financial aid is a factor, I will suggest some need-aware school, need blind schools, or schools that have like trustee scholarships, right? Or we also
need 100% need.
Or, yeah, 100% need without loans. Yes, without loans, exactly. And then I'll also recommend, you know, applying for, and students can start applying for any of these scholarships. We had like 10 students applying for the Coca-Cola. We have students applying for the Elk Scholarship. I mean, you know, there's so many of them. So part of it's through, you know, individualized communication, through meetings, through emails, and also kind of helping when they craft that college list.
Every time you get a Coca-Cola scholarship?
We had 4 finalists, but no winners that I'm aware of this year, unfortunately. They've won other scholarships, but Coca-Cola is tough. It's tough, yeah. Yes.
I just wanted to say, I think you guys do a great job. My son graduated last year, and he's happy, healthy, and thriving. And you really, Melissa, definitely, I remember when he came and told you what you wanted to do, and you're like, huh, nobody wanted to do that before. And you found the place for him. And I really appreciate that. And if I have one piece of advice, stop looking at the names. I know it's so hard. We go to the Meadows, we want Harvard, Yale, we want that, but if your kid's gonna be miserable there, it doesn't matter what hat they're wearing. I mean, my kid is going to a great school, but he's going to the school that has what he wants. And it's not an Ivy, and that's okay. And he's been here since beginning school.
Also, it's better than some IVs, though. It's a good school.
He goes to great school, but my most important thing is he's happy, and he's doing well, and he's doing amazing things, because like you said, it's a very specific thing he wants to do, and that happens to be one of the best schools for that program. So he just went to the ESPYs over the summer. He just worked the NFL Sports Honors, where he had to escort Terry Crews everywhere and had to hang out with him the whole day. I mean, Harvard would not be doing that for what my son wanted, but Bryce did, and I thank you guys for that.
Well, on that note, we want to say thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. We will continue to offer these copies. I wanted to mention also on our website, you can find all of our contact information, and we'll be sending out an email with our contacts, our links to our how to schedule meetings. But if you go to, for example, our website and our school profile, which I think is really important to familiarize yourself with anyway. This is actually included with every college application, so colleges understand who we are as a school. Our contact information is listed right there as well. And if you send us an email, we can send you the link to our calendar, and you can schedule a meeting. But this was great data that if you're interested in seeing kind of a little bit more about who we are as an upper school, you'll find that information here. But we'll stick around for questions and individualized questions, and we hope you have a great day. We hope you found this information informative. Thank you.
Thank you.